Laura.
Greetings.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you for taking so many of the questions that the Granite Staters have for you.
Absolutely.
If I understand your words correctly, you do not believe that there is systemic racism in America.
Correct.
So I should check with you first
Yes.
on that.
I
Okay.
do not believe America is a racist country. I don't. I can expound, but it sounds like you have a question.
I do.
Okay. I'll wait.
And maybe I want to know a little bit about your distinction between systemic racism versus national racism.
Okay.
So that's A or B or whatever it is. So how does that intersect your belief with the rise in Asian hate crimes, the rise in white supremacy activities, and on a very personal and painful part for my own family, the rise in anti-Semitic attacks and the waving of Nazi flags?
Yeah. So thank you, Laura, for the question. I would simply say that America is not a racist country, period. I don't apologize for that conclusion. When asked the same question, my friends on the other side of the aisle who are running the country, kind of, sort of, came to the same conclusion. I'd say this, though, really important question. Is there racism in America? Of course there is. Are the systems of our country racist? I don't think so. One of the things I did about 3 or 4 years ago is I led the efforts to create legislation. I sponsored the legislation, the anti-Semitism legislation that focused on anti-Semitism and hate on college campuses. Mm-hmm. It's the same legislation that former president made into an executive order and invited me with a few hundred of my closest Jewish friends to come celebrate that legislation that I worked on really hard to get passed. And fortunately, we found another route for it to happen. But yeah, the rise in hate crimes in the nation is not indicative with the soul of America. We certainly have hot spots that we need to challenge. My sister-in-law, former sister-in-law, is Korean. My nephew is African-American Asian. And so focusing on some of the challenges that we see is the right thing to do. I think it's our responsibility as the American people, the American family, to stand up when we see it and speak out against it, not just when it affects you, but when it affects any of us. And that's what I've tried to do with my legislation. I've done it with my words. I've done it with my social media accounts to stand up and speak out against it. But I don't think our nation is racist. I do think we have pockets that we have to fight, persistent pockets at times that we have to fight against and eliminate. I think we've done a really good job. I'll finish with this, Laura. I'm from South Carolina. Did y'all know that? Good, this is good. I was born and raised in Charleston, the place where the Civil War started. I happen to be African American, just in case you forgot. And I think I'm funny sometimes, by the way. But here's what I'll tell you. In 2010, I ran for Congress against the son of the most popular governor in my lifetime, a guy named Carroll Campbell Jr. His son, namesake Carroll Campbell III, was one of my congressional opponents. He got in the race first. And then Strom Thurmond's son got in the race as well. And then here I come, a young kid from a single-parent household, mired in poverty, in the place where the Civil War started, running in a Republican primary against two behemoths of South Carolina political power and history. And I won 68-32 in a head-on-head match. Why did that occur? I believe it's because of America's evolution that we judge people more on the content of their character than the color of their skin. We have work that still needs to be done, but can we pause long enough to see the remarkable arc of progress that is ours? We should embrace it, we should thank God for it, and then we should go back to work to make it even better. So count me in to fighting anti-Semitism every day of every week.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Quick follow-up for you there, Senator, on this difficult topic, obviously.
Sure.
We're only 6 years removed now from the first black president, Barack Obama, who had to deal with a lot of situations on his own and decided to get involved in certain situations on his own as well. Dr. Gates in Boston, the beer summit there at the White House. How would your approach to race relations be different than President Obama's in the White House?
It's a great question. I would say that my approach to most things would be different than President Obama's in the White House, to be honest with you, to include the issue of progress. I think we focus so much on race from a historical perspective and not enough looking in the windshield of America's future. The good news on the racial front, we should not try to be insincere about the progress we have made. We should also not whitewash the history of our nation. Our nation's history is provocative and painful on the issue of race, but our progress is palpable. It's one of the reasons why when we had this recent ruling from the Supreme Court on the end of affirmative action, 47% of African Americans agreed with the decision. Only 36% disagreed. What we're seeing in all corridors of life is progress. We still have work to do, but the progress we're making as a nation is undeniable. I want to make sure that we lead in progress. And here's the good news. From all the statistics that I've studied, all the things I've looked at, all the places I've gone, the future of this nation, the future of individual prosperity and opportunity will not be the color of your skin, but it will be the quality of your education. If you are resigned to send your child to a failing public school, the chances are really good, whether that's a black kid in an inner city or a white kid in rural America, pretty good. They will not realize their full potential. But if they have a really good K through 12 education, chances are really good that they're going to do remarkably well in the greatest country on God's green earth.